Chapter 1. Understanding why you're so nervous. A client of mine, Andrew, came to me in his final year of law school. He'd had one girlfriend briefly during his freshman year of college, and he'd shared his first and only sexual experience with her. Since then, he'd just been on 3 or 4 dates, and he told me that he'd found the dates to be extremely uncomfortable and awkward. While he tended to be friends with many women, he was hesitant to initiate romantic relationships with women he was interested in. On a few occasions, he'd asked out girls who hadn't been receptive. Hearing him say no crushed his confidence and made it harder for him to get past his shy reserve. Andrew started his law school internship at a local courthouse in the spring. Another intern was a young woman named Kara, who had long dark hair and a friendly smile. Andrew liked her intelligence and thought she was pretty. He was immediately attracted to her, and as he got to know her, it became clear to him that she was interested in him too. So he gathered up his courage and asked her to have lunch with him the next Friday. When she said yes, his joy at her acceptance quickly was replaced by dread. As the day of the date approached, Andrew became consumed with self-doubt and nerves. What would he talk about? How could he show Kara that he liked her without being overly enthusiastic? What if he started saying ridiculous things and embarrassed himself? Thinking about all of the ways their lunch could go wrong was terrifying and overwhelming, and Andrew started to believe it was entirely possible, in fact probable, that Kara would leave the date thinking he was completely strange and pathetic, and that he would never live down his shame. His anxiety became so great that he finally made up an excuse to get out of the date. He stopped talking to Kara much at work because he was ashamed of the way he'd acted, and eventually he gave up on the idea of dating her. Andrew's fear about how his anxiety could potentially affect the date got in the way of following his heart and taking a chance. His beliefs about how wrong things could go or how bad it would feel prevented him from potentially finding a connection with Kara. The truth is, dating is a bit intimidating for most people. But if you're shy or socially anxious, it's more than intimidating, it can be downright painful and terrifying. You may monitor every move you make, and your worry about being judged or found lacking may only worsen as you try to do or say the right thing, wanting desperately to avoid embarrassing yourself. Yet often, the harder you try, the less you feel like yourself. You probably want to retreat, hide, or do anything possible to get away from the awkwardness you feel. Like Andrew, you may end up feeling like it's better to be safe and alone than to risk being hurt. Fortunately, all of that can change, and this book will show you the way. But in order to learn new ways of approaching dating, it's essential to first understand shyness, social anxiety, and anxiety disorders and see how they can affect dating and relationships. Shyness. If you consider yourself a shy person, it's likely that you tend to be uncomfortable, quiet, and reserved in social situations, especially when you're meeting someone new or talking to a potential love interest. With shyness, you may feel as though you'd like to have close relationships with others, but it seems too difficult to meet people, or you can't imagine maintaining a long-term relationship with anyone new. Roisman et al. 2004. There's often a sense of loneliness. Mounts et al. 2006, and isolation. Schmidt and Fox 1995. Indeed, research shows that young adults who are shy tend to date less than their non-shy peers, Legg 2006, and aren't as likely to be in a committed or high-quality relationship. Nelson et al. 2008. The most common symptoms of shyness include the following: Sieber and Myers 1992. Feeling tense, self-conscious, and awkward around others. Being uneasy in social situations. Having discomfort in unfamiliar settings. Fearing or avoiding group settings, such as parties or social events. thinking carefully and persisting in problem solving, questioning your abilities or having trouble with self-confidence, feeling less in control of your own fate. Clearly, shyness can have a big effect on dating. Dating is a process that involves meeting someone new, getting to know the person, and deciding whether this is someone you're attracted to and want to spend time with. You have to figure out whether the two of you have common interests and share similar values and goals. A certain amount of judgment and evaluation is required to determine whether a person is someone you want to see again, someone you want to date but perhaps not be in a serious relationship with, or someone you might want to develop a deeper relationship with. In this way, both you and your date are evaluating your potential compatibility. But when you're shy, this aspect of evaluation and being judged can be too painful to bear. Shy people tend to be hyper-aware of and sensitive to how others might view them. Therefore, the process of dating brings up uncomfortable emotions and upsetting thoughts. On the other hand, the thought of having to potentially let down someone who's interested in you when you don't feel the same way may seem unbearable. You may wonder, how can I hurt someone's feelings that way? What am I supposed to say? Dealing with rejection, either receiving it or giving it, is never easy, but you'll become more comfortable with it as you progress through this book. People who are shy have a higher likelihood of having social anxiety, and many of the traits overlap. But being shy doesn't mean you automatically have social anxiety disorder. In fact, about 82% of people who are shy do not have social anxiety disorder. Heiser, Turner, and Beidel 2003. Social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder, SAD, affects 7 to 12% of the population, Kessler al. 2005, and is the third most common psychological disorder in the United States, Kashdan and Herbert 2001. SAD is defined as the persistent fear of one or more situations in which the person is exposed to possible scrutiny by others and fears that he or she may do something or act in a way that will be humiliating or embarrassing. American Psychiatric Association 2013, 241. With SAD, your anxiety may occur when you have to meet new people or are in a group setting and feel you are being judged or evaluated by others. You may worry that you'll be embarrassed or humiliated by visible symptoms of anxiety. You may have physical symptoms such as blushing, sweating, rapid heart rate, quavering voice, or shakiness, or you may have no outwardly apparent symptoms. Either way, because of your fear, you end up avoiding social settings and may find even the thought of going into a new social situation upsetting. Social anxiety is a chronic problem, affecting people for an average duration of 22.9 years, Vichan al. 2000. Because of its long span, social anxiety can have long-standing effects on quality of life if left untreated. It can affect your work performance, prevent you from developing friendships, and hurt your ability to successfully date and find romantic partners. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, American Psychiatric Association 2013, the manual that psychologists, psychiatrists, and doctors use to diagnose psychological disorders, defines social anxiety disorder as having the following symptoms. You have marked fear or anxiety about one or more social situations in which you feel exposed to possible scrutiny by others, such as having a conversation, eating or drinking with others, or giving a speech. You fear that you'll show anxiety symptoms or act in a way that will offend others or be negatively evaluated by them, causing you to feel humiliated, embarrassed, or rejected. You either actively avoid these social situations or endure them with marked fear or anxiety. You recognize that your fear or anxiety is out of proportion to the actual threat posed by the social situation. Your fear, anxiety, or avoidance of these social situations lasts 6 months or longer. Your level of fear, anxiety, and avoidance causes significant distress or impairment in your social life, work life, or other important areas of your daily life. Social anxiety has an early age of onset, meaning its symptoms are likely to first appear during childhood, or in the early teen years, between ages 14 and 17. Stein and Gorman 2001. If you have social anxiety in childhood, you may have been worried about being separated from your parents, had an upset stomach or stomachache when nervous, or had trouble going to school in the mornings because of feelings of fear or nervousness. You may have feared that something awful would happen to a family member, feared being in crowded places like a busy playground or cafeteria, felt nervous if you had to stay away from home overnight, or felt scared of the dark. Because of your hesitation in social situations, you may have had less opportunity to form close relationships and experience positive social support, which would have added to your feelings of isolation and loneliness. In addition, those who have teen-onset social anxiety can often recall a specific social incident that was embarrassing or acutely stressful that occurred prior to developing SAD. Rossellini et al. 2013. Social anxiety also clearly affects relationships in adulthood. Adults who are socially anxious tend to be less emotionally expressive, be less open in sharing or talking about themselves, and have lower levels of intimacy in romantic relationships. Sparavon and Rapey 2009. They also have a tendency to express more negativity when sharing their feelings and experiences with the partners. Wenzel et al. 2005, which can lead to less closeness in their relationships. Kashdan et al. 2007. Because of the difficulties in forming and keeping close relationships, people with social anxiety are less likely to date and marry than those with other forms of anxiety disorders. Vichin et al. 2000. And finally, if you're single and have SAD, you're more likely than someone who's married to avoid social situations and to have a mood disorder. Ultimately, the more severe social anxiety is, the more likely it is to affect your ability to form strong relationships. Hart et al. 1999. Many people have some of the symptoms of SAD but don't qualify for a full diagnosis of social anxiety disorder. In some ways, SAD is like a continuum, with high social anxiety on one end and only moderate social anxiety on the other. You probably fluctuate in where you fall on the scale depending on the circumstances and how stressed you are in other areas of your life. Regardless of where you are on the spectrum, the tools and techniques in this book will help you change your relationship to your anxiety and open up in intimate relationships. Panic attacks and panic disorder. You may have developed panic attacks that occur when you're faced with the prospect of a new dating situation or being in a new group of people. During a panic attack, you may experience shortness of breath, a lump in your throat, rapid heartbeat, dizziness, nausea, flushing of your face, tingling in your hands or feet, muscle weakness, a sensation of shakiness, lightheadedness, ringing in your ears, or hyperventilation. You may worry that you're losing control or going crazy, or even fear that you're going to die, although these symptoms aren't actually lethal. Because the panic is so unpleasant, you may end up adjusting your routine and avoiding certain places or activities to reduce your chance of having a panic attack. If panic attacks occur repeatedly, you may develop panic disorder, which is marked by fear of having a panic attack and not being able to escape or get help. If you have panic attacks, one of the reasons you experience higher levels of physiological arousal when you're anxious, like blushing, sweating, or rapid heartbeat, could be a phenomenon called anxiety sensitivity. Rees and McNally 1985. People who have anxiety sensitivity are much more attuned to bodily sensations such as rapid heartbeat, and tend to have a heightened response to stress. Therefore, when you feel stressed about being on a date, you're more likely to notice that you have elevated heartbeat and breathing rates, both symptoms of anxiety. As you focus on your body's sensations, you begin to interpret them as signals that something is very wrong with you, perhaps believing that you're having a heart attack or nervous breakdown. In this way, your response to your anxiety symptoms causes you to feel out of control and in danger. McNally, 1989. Ignoring your anxiety symptoms feels impossible because your anxiety sensitivity causes you to focus on your physiological sensations and closely monitor your body for signs of danger. The result is a vicious cycle of hypervigilance and fear of how anxiety will affect your body, leading to heightened symptoms, and on and on. The antidote to this cycle, which we'll explore in upcoming chapters, is to change the way you respond to your anxiety symptoms. Rather than seeing panic as your enemy, you can learn to see your symptoms for what they're, anxiety, and accept them as a non-harmful, albeit uncomfortable, part of your anxiety. As you move away from trying to monitor, prevent, or decrease your symptoms, you'll notice that they become less intense and shorter in duration. Generalized anxiety disorder. Generalized anxiety disorder (GAD) is a condition that involves anxiety about a number of events and activities across a broad spectrum, rather than worrying about a more specific event or social situations. With GAD, you feel perpetually anxious or overwhelmed by everyday things, like school or work responsibilities, and your anxiety becomes higher during periods of high stress. You worry about many aspects of your future and may fear that you're doomed. No matter how hard you try to let things go, you feel like you can't stop worrying. If you have GAD, it's likely that you feel you've been a worrier for your entire life, so much so that your level of worry almost feels normal. However, ongoing high levels of anxiety interfere with your quality of life, and your responses to stress take a toll on your well-being. Physical symptoms of GAD include the following: long-standing feelings of restlessness, ongoing tension, a feeling of being on edge, irritability, difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, ongoing muscle tension, stomach pain, joint, neck, or back pain. In order to be diagnosed with GAD, your anxiety must persist for at least 6 months and cause you significant distress or interfere with your daily life. GAD is the most common form of anxiety disorder and is often accompanied by depression. Ruling out medical explanations. Because the physical symptoms of anxiety and panic attacks can be similar to symptoms of medical conditions, such as thyroid problems, heart conditions, and vertigo, it's important to see your primary care physician in order to rule out any physical cause of these symptoms. Once a medical cause has been ruled out, you can move forward knowing that your physical symptoms truly are a manifestation of anxiety sensitivity and not a signal that your body needs medical treatment. Depression. Depression affects a person's moods, thoughts, and behaviors through a sense of pervasive sadness, emptiness, numbness, or loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities. If you have an anxiety disorder, there's a good chance you'll also have problems with depression. Depression and anxiety are so frequently seen together that many researchers believe it's actually more likely for people to experience both, as opposed to only depression. Rappaport, 2001. With mixed depression and anxiety, you'll notice that you tend to expect the worst, feel hopeless about the future, have feelings of worthlessness, have difficulty concentrating, have trouble sleeping, have low energy, have high irritability and worry, and move through your day with a sense of hypervigilance, or constantly feeling on guard. Rivers Vasquez al. 2004. One way that depression affects dating is by putting a damper on motivation to go on dates or interact with others in a social way. It makes you more likely to withdraw and seek isolation. Depression can also lower your sex drive and inhibit sexual desire, which may lead to problems as a new relationship progresses and becomes more intimate. Lastly, depression can affect dating by creating self-doubt and feelings of low self-worth, leading you to feel unworthy or undeserving of someone you'd otherwise be interested in. These are frequent problems for anxious daters, and I'll address them throughout the book. Alcohol use. Alcohol use is also often related to problems with anxiety. One study found that 23.3% of people who suffer from social anxiety disorder also suffer from an alcohol use disorder. Thomas, Sevos, and Randall 1999. This may happen because alcohol can help you feel more comfortable and competent in social situations. Thomas, Randall, and Carrigan 2003. When alcohol becomes a crutch you use to help you get through social events or dates, it can easily become a habit or abuse problem. Plus, being intoxicated on a date makes it hard to be yourself and get to know your partner. You're more likely to do or say things that are out of character, and this can get in the way of developing real intimacy. Therefore, moderation or abstaining from alcohol is key to working through your dating anxiety, rather than numbing it with drinks. Dating anxiety. The term dating anxiety refers to worry, distress, and inhibition experienced in social situations that involve dating partners or potential dating partners. Glickman and LaGreca 2004. It affects people of all ages, ranging from adolescents to older adults re-entering the dating world. Corney and Morris 2008. With dating anxiety, the days leading up to a date or interaction can be grueling as you worry about what may go wrong, and the hours and days after a date are excruciating as you replay what happened over and over again. Dating anxiety can impair your ability to develop relationships in many ways. One way it does so is by limiting your range of potential mates. The more people you have a chance to date and interact with, the greater your chances of finding someone really special. In this way, dating is a numbers game. Plus, if you're unable to meet or open up to many people, you may have less of an idea of what you're looking for in a partner or which traits are most compatible with yours. Dating anxiety may also end up hurting your ability to connect with people you like. You're likely to experience a running critical commentary during dates, telling you things like "that was a stupid thing to say" or "why would she be interested in that? You're being boring." These self-critical thoughts leave you more on edge and less open, present, and genuine, making it difficult for your date to get to know you. Having this type of harsh perspective can also make you more critical and judgmental about potential partners. Being guarded or ruling someone out based on a small amount of information can sabotage your chances of giving a potentially good partner a fair chance. In addition, dating anxiety can also cause people to stay in a relationship that's unfulfilling due to fear of having to date again if they break up with the partner. They do themselves a disservice, settling for a subpar relationship because anxiety rules the choices and limits their options. Whatever your situation, this book will help you feel confident in a variety of dating situations and allow you to discover what you truly want in a relationship. The first step is to assess the extent to which anxiety is affecting your dating. The following quiz will help you do just that. Exercise: assessing how much anxiety is affecting your dating. This quiz will help you take a closer look at how anxiety is contributing to your problems with dating. Read each statement below, then, on the line to the left of each, write the score that best indicates how this statement applies to you, using the following scale: 1 equals rarely or never, 2 equals sometimes, 3 equals often, and 4 equals very often. You may also download this quiz at. See the back of this book for more details. Blank, I fear that the person I go on a date with will find fault with me. Blank. On dates, I overuse or rely on alcohol to deal with my anxiety. Blank. I fear that I'm not good enough for the type of people I'd like to date. Blank. I worry about the repercussions of appearing aggressive, pushy, or desperate in dating situations. Blank. I feel nervous about approaching someone I'm attracted to. Blank. The prospect of initiating sexual activity makes me feel highly nervous. Blank. The idea of turning down a date's sexual advances makes me feel highly uncomfortable and worried. Blank. I feel anxious about my ability to find a potential date. Blank. I worry about how to manage my emotions about dating. Blank. The prospect of actively looking for someone to go on a date with causes anxiety. Blank. I often feel anxious when talking to someone I find attractive. Blank. I worry that I'll do or say something that will lead me to feel humiliated or embarrassed when I'm around someone I like. Blank. I worry that my date will judge my appearance in a negative way. Blank. The prospect of being rejected by someone I like leads to strong feelings of fear and worry. Blank. Calling a potential romantic partner causes me great apprehension. Blank. It takes me much longer to become comfortable around new people. Blank. I end up letting dating opportunities pass me by even though I wish I could respond in a more proactive or engaged way. Blank. I avoid going on dates. If you answered 3 or 4 for at least 4 of the questions, it's likely that your anxiety is hurting your dating life. These scores indicate that dating doesn't just bring up everyday nerves or jitters, it brings out a heightened and debilitating sense of anxiety and self-consciousness. If you answered 1 or 2 for most of the statements, anxiety may not have significantly impaired your dating life. However, it will still be helpful to find new ways of approaching your anxiety and to get more in touch with what you want from a romantic partner. The techniques and practices in this book will be invaluable in deepening your capacity for self-compassion and acceptance and aiding in your journey toward love. Coping style. As you've seen, some of the most common worries about dating involve anxiety about rejection, fear of being embarrassed or humiliated, fear of not being good enough, fear of being judged, and worries about sexual intimacy. Other sources of dating worries include anxiety about feeling weak or broken, a need for control, fear of repeating negative experiences from the past, fear of emotional intimacy, and rumination, or not letting go of worry. In this section, we'll look at how these relationship fears develop and how the way you cope with these fears relates to your relationship success. The way you interact with others and cope with conflict or potential ruptures in relationships is your relationship coping style. There are 3 primary coping styles, or ways of relating to others: moving away from others, moving toward others, and moving against others. Tiber and McClure 2011. Inflexible coping styles act as defense mechanisms, behaviors that increase your sense of safety when you feel hurt or attacked or have unmet needs. People usually learn these coping styles in childhood, when they discover that a particular style of reacting to conflict or painful feelings works well in guarding against anxiety. If your parents weren't very involved with your life as you were growing up, or if you were neglected, you may have learned to deal with problems on your own, allowing you to avoid the anxiety associated with needing others. The result is often a coping style of moving away from others. If your parents placed high expectations on you and rewarded you for behaving in ways that were beneficial to them, but criticized you when you didn't meet the needs, you may have learned to try to please others in order to avoid the disapproval. The result is often a coping style of moving toward others. Coping styles can be problematic if they become overly rigid or inflexible. When you typically respond to others only in a certain way, moving toward, away from, or against, it can damage your ability to form and keep close relationships. As you read the following descriptions of each coping style, think about which style you tend to use. Moving away from others. Whenever Brad found himself beginning to get into a serious relationship, he had a tendency to shut down emotionally. It always felt like the women he dated were too needy or emotionally involved. He often found himself backing away, especially if there was conflict or emotional turmoil. He generally didn't experience strong emotions, and he didn't know how to respond to girlfriends when they got upset. Usually, the more he withdrew, the more frustrated they'd get, causing him to want to retreat even more. Brad's coping style is moving away from others. At an early age, he learned not to depend on others, and he prefers to be independent and autonomous. He has trouble showing affection and attending to the needs of the women he goes out with. Dating casually is comfortable for him, and he realizes that part of him feels incapable of having a long-term relationship. Chloe also tends to move away from others, but only people she really likes. She's comfortable being open with her friends and guys she isn't attracted to, but she becomes guarded and extremely closed off whenever she's around someone she's attracted to. Those situations bring up fears of rejection and being judged as not good enough, fears that aren't activated around men she isn't attracted to. In response to her fear of judgment, she shuts down and is cold toward guys she likes in order to protect herself. As a result, she's typically pursued by men she isn't interested in, since she feels comfortable enough around them to be herself. The coping style of moving away from others tends to occur in people who fear closeness and dislike depending on others. One study showed that people who tend to withdraw as a coping method were likely to expect their relationships to fail and were also likely to be less committed to their relationships. Bernie al. 2009. Of course, less commitment to relationships typically results in fewer and shorter relationships. While sometimes it makes sense to take a bit of space or time away from a conflict, repeatedly withdrawing and not coming back to talk things through signifies an inflexible coping style. Moving toward others. Maria is a people pleaser, she wants others to like her. She's considerate and caring, and she's always there for her friends when they need her. In her dating life, she tends to attract men who take advantage of her. She always feels that she's giving more to the relationship, trying to please the men she dates and make them happy with the hope that they'll come to appreciate her. But instead, Maria has become increasingly anxious about dating. The more she tries to please someone she's going out with, for example, going wherever he wants to go or changing her plans with friends to accept a last-minute date, the more anxious she feels about the relationship. She worries that if she lets her date down or makes any mistakes, he'll lose interest in her. Richard tends to move toward others once he's in a committed relationship. The more he feels invested in a partner, the more desperate he is for the two of them to spend all of the time together. He constantly wants to know how she feels about him because he worries that her feelings could change from one day to the next. Women tend to feel suffocated in the relationship, which only causes him more anxiety, and they always break up with him eventually. If you tend to move toward others, you're more likely to develop anxiety and depression and are also more likely to have relationship problems. Jinhao et al. 2012. These problems often center around feeling insecure in the relationship, wanting constant confirmation that the other person is interested in you, and feeling overwhelmed by anything going wrong in the early stages of the relationship. When anxiety about a new relationship is so pervasive that it interferes with your ability to develop trust and intimacy, it means your coping style of moving toward others is inflexible. In addition, this craving for connection can have an opposite effect, as excessive reassurance seeking and attempts to please seem insatiable to others and end up alienating them. Moving against others. Dallas has a strong personality and, in her words, prefers to tell it like it is. She doesn't shy away from confrontation, and in dating situations, she tends to respond to feeling hurt or rejected by becoming aggressive or intimidating. Once, when a date called to cancel the plans because he was sick, Dallas told him, "Look, if you don't want to see me, just tell me the truth. I really don't appreciate being strung along." Joey finds it off-putting when women expect him to pay for dates and be at the beck and call. His resentment tends to permeate all of his dates. Even with women who don't expect too much of him or are very kind, he tends to become defensive if he has even the slightest suspicion that he's being taken advantage of. Once, when on a first date with a woman, she innocently suggested to him that they grab a cab instead of walk to get dessert. He sharply replied, "I suppose you're used to being chauffeured around. Well, sorry to tell you, but if you're looking for someone to treat you like a princess, I'm not the guy. You can get your own cab, but I'm walking." Needless to say, there was no second date. In this way, Joey is moving against his dates, responding harshly if he thinks there's any chance he might be found lacking or be used. Pushing others away is often done in an attempt to protect one's sense of self-worth. If you tend to move against others, you're probably more comfortable if you're in charge of every situation. You probably want to maintain control of your own emotions and control others' behaviors. You may approach relationships with a sense of competition and a strong need to be right. Being taken advantage of or exploited may be one of your top fears. Challenging others or intimidating them with anger helps you feel more competent and in control, warding off feelings of insecurity or helplessness. However, using this coping style can alienate others and sever relationships you may wish to maintain. The role of avoidance in the 3 coping styles. What all of these coping styles have in common is that they are used to avoid dealing with the anxiety that comes with dating. When people have trouble dealing with difficult internal experiences, like thoughts or emotions, it's common to try to avoid situations where these uncomfortable experiences occur. Hayes, Strosahl, and Wilson 1999. Avoidance is a key factor in anxiety, shyness, distress, and various psychological problems. Zinberg et al. 1992. Let's take a look at how avoidance played a role in some of the vignettes above. Brad avoided the anxiety associated with being close to and needing someone by withdrawing from women as the relationship became more serious. Likewise, Chloe avoided anxiety due to feeling vulnerable by acting coldly toward men she was attracted to. Maria didn't avoid romantic partners, but she did try to avoid feeling insecure or undesirable through excessive efforts to please her dates. By not putting herself in a position to get her own needs met, she also avoided anxiety around being rejected or feeling disapproval from her dates. For Joey, showing anger was a way to avoid the discomfort of feeling vulnerable to embarrassment, humiliation, or being taken advantage of. When avoidance of any type of discomfort takes precedence over connection, you'll have trouble developing the types of relationship you're looking for. Exercise: assessing the costs of avoidance. For some of the exercises in this book, I'll ask that you consider various questions and then write your responses. You may want to keep a special journal for these exercises. Use whatever you're most comfortable with, a notepad, loose leaf paper, or a computer. This exercise will help you explore the role of avoidance in your dating anxiety. Understanding the costs of your avoidance is a critical first step in finding love. Consider the following questions and sample answers, then write your own responses in your journal. What dating situations tend to cause you the most emotional or psychological discomfort? Example: I'm uncomfortable appearing too eager or interested in a guy. I don't want to seem desperate. List specific examples of times when you've used the coping styles outlined above: moving away from others, moving toward others, and moving against others. If you tend to mostly use one style, it's fine to list examples of just that one. For each example, think about what experience or feeling you were trying to avoid. Example: when I walked away from John at the birthday party, I was trying to avoid feeling uncomfortable and looking too eager. Seeming too eager would have felt embarrassing to me. How have efforts to avoid anxiety hurt your romantic life? List some examples. Perhaps you declined an invitation, reacted harshly to a date, or tried too hard to please someone. Example: because of my efforts to avoid anxiety, I've missed out on getting to know John, as well as other guys in the past. Because of my fears, I have a lot of trouble showing my interest when I like someone. Summary: in this chapter, you've increased your awareness of the role anxiety is playing in your dating life. It's helpful to remember that being shy, having social anxiety, or tending to withdraw from others isn't a life sentence condemning you to live in isolation. And now that you understand why your anxiety is so intense in certain situations, you can begin to move forward in ways that will help you be more comfortable getting close to others. In Chapter 2, we'll take a look at some of the most common dating worries, and I'll offer exercises that can be helpful for each. A key approach is to develop more awareness of the thoughts and emotions underlying your anxiety, and then to extend acceptance to those thoughts and feelings.